Okay, let's dive in. If you are a family caregiver, or maybe you've tried to help one out, you definitely know the situation. You finally, get the energy together, the courage to ask for some help, and then you hear it. That phrase usually sounds really sincere, right? Just tell me what you need.
Oh, it's such a classic setup, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you hear that and think, okay, great, relief is coming. But then, poof, the help just evaporates. Or, maybe even worse, the person shows up, plants themselves on your couch, and just scrolls through their phone for 2 hours.
Yeah. And you end up feeling actually more stressed out than before you even asked.
Exactly. More frustrated.
That exact feeling, that moment where you think, wow, asking for help is harder than just doing it myself. That's what we're getting into today. We often think, okay, the problem must be the helper isn't willing or they don't get it. But our sources suggest something else, something actually more fixable. It's
Uh,
often a failure of behavioral communication.
Precisely. So for this deep dive, we're pulling ideas from some pretty structured fields, behavioral gerontology and applied behavior analysis, ABA, and we're applying those principles to how we ask for support. The idea is to stop seeing asking for help as this big emotional thing and start treating it like a behavior, something you can structure, simplify, and even reinforce to make it reliable.
So it's like we're reverse engineering how to get help successfully because usually the requests caregivers make are just, well, they're too big or too fuzzy. Like asking someone, can you just take over caregiving for a day? That's huge. And it's not clear what that even
Right?
means.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And if the helper kind of fumbles it, maybe because they didn't know what to do, the caregiver feels let down, and then they're less likely to ask again, it just feeds into that burnout cycle.
The core problem, behaviorally speaking, is that these vague requests don't give the helper a clear map. There's no clear setup, the antecedent telling them what action to take, and they don't know what success the consequence actually looks like.
hmm Without that clarity, people tend to default to, well, the path of least resistance, minimal effort.
Okay, let's use a real example here because this really drives home the emotional side of this failure. Our sources talk about Sarah and her father, Mr. D. Sarah desperately needed a break, and her sister says that classic line, "Just tell me what you need."
So Sarah tries, right? But she gives that vague request, just come over sometime and keep an eye on Dad.
Mhm.
Now, in Sarah's head, keeping an eye on Dad probably means, engaging him, making sure he's okay, maybe giving her an actual hour off.
But what really happened?
The sister comes over, sits on the couch, gets totally absorbed in her phone for like 2 hours.
Mhm.
So technically, Mr. D is safe. But Sarah, she's still kind of hovering, feeling annoyed, and just thinking, why did I even bother asking?
Ugh. Yeah, that's such a perfect example of what you called a confusing antecedent, the setup, the cue.
Exactly. The request, keep an eye on Dad, was just too ambiguous. The sister didn't have an instruction manual. She didn't know the specific behavior needed, or for how long, or what counted as doing a good job. Confusing setup leads to minimal action.
Okay, so clearly just hoping for the best based on good intentions isn't cutting it. We need structure. And you mentioned applying behavior principles like task analysis and behavior chaining things, often used for the person getting care, but applying them to the helper instead.
That's the shift. Task analysis is all about breaking down a big abstract goal into small, concrete, measurable steps. Take care of Dad for an afternoon, way too big. But make sure Dad takes his 3 p.m. medicine, then sit with him while he reads the paper for 30 minutes and just make sure his water glass is full. That is a chain of specific actions. It's clear.
That clarity is step one, right? Structuring the request to define a clear behavior. But okay, if I'm a caregiver, I'm already exhausted. Adding task analysis to my plate sounds like more work. How do we make this practical?
It's actually about simplifying, not adding complexity. The key, according to the sources, is to break the need down into one single, specific, and time-bound step. That's the clear antecedent. It takes away all the guesswork for the helper.
Okay, so going back to Sarah, what's the after picture? How did she make her requests specific?
She got really granular. Instead of keep an eye on Dad, she started saying things like, hey, could you manage Dad's post-dinner routine tonight? Just from 6:30 to 7:00 p.m. All that involves is making sure he gets his glass of water and then just sits quietly while I load the dishwasher.
Ah, okay. That's specific. It's only 30 minutes. Two clear tasks. Success is easy to see.
Exactly.
Achievable.
But here's the pushback I always imagine, and I've felt this myself. If I get that specific, don't I sound, I don't know, bossy? Controlling. I'd worry about pushing people away, the very people I need help from.
That's a huge psychological barrier. Totally understandable. Caregivers worry specificity comes across as demanding. But the sources offer this really nice reframe. They call it compassion through clarity. Compassion through clarity. I like that. Explain that a bit more.
Well, think about it. Clear instructions are actually kind because they reduce the helper's anxiety. They prevent them from feeling like they might fail. They know exactly what they're signing up for, how long it will take, and what success looks like. No awkward guessing games.
Okay, that makes sense. You're setting them up to feel good about helping.
Right. And this structured approach works especially well with people outside the immediate family. Friends, neighbors, people from your church or community group. They often genuinely want to help, but they need a defined task. Would you be able to drop off a meal Thursday around 5:40? That's clear, it's manageable, it's easy to say yes to and feel good about.
It really shifts the whole dynamic, doesn't it? Makes the help less ambiguous, which helps the caregiver and the helper.
Absolutely. And that feeling of success, that confidence the helper gets, that leads us right into step 2. And this is maybe the most crucial part for making help last, reinforcing the assistance, delivering that positive consequence.
Okay, let's talk about the pitfall here first. The problem consequence trap.
Mm,
I know I've done this. The helper finishes, maybe they did okay, maybe not perfectly, and the caregiver is just so drained they either immediately escape to take their break.
Or they spot one little thing that wasn't quite right and they point it out, oh, next time, could you?
Yeah. Or they just give a quick kind of distracted thanks, and that's it.
And behaviorally speaking, every single one of those reactions, it unintentionally punishes the helping behavior. The helper thinks, okay, I gave my time and I got ignored or criticized or just a non-event.
Yeah.
Why would they eagerly jump in next time?
Right. It extinguishes the motivation.
Exactly. So to keep that help coming, the caregiver must provide immediate positive reinforcement, straight out of the ABA playbook.
So more than just thanks, appreciate it, why isn't simple gratitude enough?
Because the reinforcement needs to be specific and linked to the impact it had. Our sources highlight 3 key things that really work as reinforcers for helpers. First, acknowledge the impact. You have to say clearly and genuinely how their specific action helped you.
Okay, focus on the benefit to me, the caregiver, not just that they completed the task. What else?
Second, avoid criticism. Seriously.
Yeah.
In that moment of reinforcement, focus only on what went well, even if it wasn't perfect. Perfectionism kills sustainable help. And third, offer a reciprocal reward. This doesn't mean payment. It could be offering them a drink, a snack, maybe sharing a quick positive story about the person they just helped. Something that makes them feel appreciated and connected.
That focus on impact feels really key. Let's contrast that generic thanks with the structured reinforcement again.
Okay, so instead of just, hey, thanks for watching, Dad, you'd say something like, thank you so much. You sitting and reading the paper with Dad for that hour and a half, that gave me the time I desperately needed to go for a walk and just clear my head. I honestly feel like a new person right now, ready for the evening shift.
Wow. Okay, yeah. That directly connects their action reading the paper to your tangible relief and improved state.
Right. It makes the helper feel not just helpful, but effective, like a hero almost. That's incredibly reinforcing.
Okay, but let's tackle the big, hairy issue here, the doing it wrong trap. Let's say the helper did manage Dad's post-dinner routine, but they, I don't know, gave him the wrong kind of yogurt, or they folded the towels all weirdly. As the main caregiver, seeing that, it's really hard to bite your tongue. What's the rule?
The rule is tough, but it's crucial for the long game. If the core goal of the request was met, let's say, Dad was safely supervised for that 30 minutes, then you reinforce the success immediately. You reinforce the fact that you got 30 minutes of freedom. If the goal was getting laundry off the floor and into baskets, you reinforce that. The sources are really clear on this. Do not correct minor errors in that moment of reinforcement.
So you just swallow the urge to mention the yogurt flavor?
You swallow it hard. If you absolutely must give feedback on the technique, you do it way later. Maybe calmly, neutrally, when you're setting up the next request for help, but right after they've helped. Your priority is reinforcing the act of helping to ensure it happens again. Sustainability trumps perfection.
That requires a huge mental shift for the caregiver, letting go of control over the small stuff.
It really was. But it's vital for building that reliable network. Okay, so that brings us to step 3, scheduling and troubleshooting. We need a strategy to stop caregivers from only asking for help when they're already drowning. Asking out of desperation is a negative antecedent. It puts pressure on everyone.
Yeah, I get that. When you ask because you're in crisis mode, your tone is probably stressed, the request feels huge. It's just not a good setup.
Exactly. So the solution is to make seeking help a planned, routine behavior for the caregiver themselves. The strategy suggested is simple. Schedule maybe 15 minutes once a week, like Sunday evening, and use that time to proactively think about the week ahead and set out maybe 2 or 3 specific structured requests for help for that coming week.
Ah, so you're making asking a proactive scheduled task, not a reactive emergency measure.
Precisely. It takes the emotion and the urgency out of it. It normalizes asking for help. It turns it into a system, not a panic button. Okay, so let's quickly recap this whole thing. Let's create that clear protocol for the listener.
Let's call it the structured request protocol. What are the absolute must-do steps?
Okay, step 1, task analysis. Break down your need into one specific, observable, time-limited task. Not help me out, but can you sit with mom from 2.00 to 2.45 while I take a shower?
Got it. Step 2, clear antecedent. Deliver that request clearly, kindly, unambiguously. Remember, compassion through clarity. No room for guessing.
And step 3, positive consequence. As soon as they're done, reinforce immediately. Use genuine, specific praise that highlights the impact their help had on you.
Perfect. Okay, troubleshooting time. What if I do all that? I create a super clear 30-minute task, I ask nicely using this protocol, and the person still says no? What then?
Treat it like data, not rejection. This is important. It's not personal. It's just information. Maybe the timing was off. Try asking for a different day next time. Maybe 30 minutes was still too long. Try asking for just 15 minutes. Maybe that specific task wasn't a good fit for them. Try a different kind of task, like picking up groceries instead of direct care. You just adjust a variable and try again later, or with someone else.
So the idea is to keep experimenting. Maybe rotate tasks among different helpers. Start with really small, easy wins.
Exactly. Think of them as starter requests, maybe just 15, 20 minutes. Success breeds success. Consistent positive reinforcement is what builds cooperation over time, not pressure or making people feel guilty.
And speaking of guilt, we have to touch on that again, that feeling caregivers have about even asking.
It's so pervasive. But again, the sources offer a powerful reframe. Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness or failure. It's actually an essential caregiving behavior. It's arguably the most important thing you can do to protect your own ability to keep providing care long term. It ensures your loved one gets consistent care because you aren't burning out. And often, when these structured requests start working and help becomes reliable, that guilt starts to naturally fade anyway.
So the big takeaway here isn't about manipulating people or trying to control every little detail. It's about building a predictable, reliable pattern. Small asks, clear instructions, genuine appreciation. It leads to small successes that build up.
Right. Everyone benefits from clarity and feeling appreciated. The helper feels competent and valued. The caregiver gets actual, reliable relief. You're replacing that frustrating, vague, hit-or-miss dynamic with something built on clear communication and mutual success.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to think about. Kind of a final provocative thought based on these behavioral ideas. Guilt. Feeling guilty about asking might make you feel better in the very short term, right? You avoid that potentially awkward conversation. But behaviorally, that avoidance is what maintains the long-term burnout.
That's powerful. So instead of letting guilt win, maybe try this.
Yeah.
Acknowledge the courage it takes to ask. Maybe even pair every structured request you try to send out this week with a little moment of self-reinforcement. Acknowledge you're doing something vital for your own sustainability. So the question for you listening is, what small, specific, time-bound request could you structure today? And how will you reinforce both the helper and yourself with clarity and appreciation?